More than 2 months ago, the Illinois State House Democrats announced that they would have a special session to deal with issues around abortion. This was immediately after the U.S. Supreme Court's decision on abortion, returning the issue back to states to deal with. Illinois already has some of the most lenient laws restricting access to abortion. There's really not many restrictions at all, and taxpayers picking up the tab to a degree, and also allowing for people to come in from out of state for abortions. And even we recently just got rid of the Parental Notification Act, which ultimately required that parents be notified if their minor daughter was going to get an abortion. They didn't have to give consent for it. They just had to be notified. There was a process to allow for a bypass of that if the courts got involved. But regardless of that bypass and all the court action that happened in the decade or so before that actually was able to be implemented, the state recently just got rid of the parental notification of abortion. But of course, with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to put the issue of abortion back to the states for states to decide, it's obviously become a political issue heading into the November election. So when Democrats announced more than 2 months ago, back in the latter part of June, they said that they would come about and bring a special session so that they could see how Illinois could better facilitate access to abortion in the grand context of what's happening nationwide. So we have yet to hear about a special session, when it's going to happen. They essentially went all the way up to announcing they would have a special session, but didn't provide a date. Now, just some of the logistics for people who don't necessarily understand what a special session is in the legislative calendar. So the Illinois legislature has a 2-year term. All right. So for 2 years, they have a body that is elected by the people, and they go and do the work. That's why we have elections every 2 years, especially in the House. The Senate has staggered seats. But in those 2 years, they pass legislation. At the beginning of each one calendar year, they can pass legislation in the scheduled spring session. All right, so they come together, they pass. Ultimately, the main thing that they have to do is pass a budget. That's why there's a May 31st deadline to pass bills with simple majorities. Anything after that, it takes super majorities to make something effective immediately. So after the spring session, then it takes more votes to make things more immediate. All right. So you then get into the summer months where we're at now. And in the summer months, you got politicking happening, especially in an election year. So the various lawmakers, they're back in their districts and they're talking about the issues, abortion being one of those issues. But they can also call a special session whenever. And here we are in the summer months before an election. There is already a scheduled post-election session, typically referred to as veto session. And that's where lawmakers could come back and deal with any vetoes from the governor or any amendatory vetoes from the governor, or they could just bring up whatever they want. But they would still have to pass things that they want immediately effective with super majorities in the fall. So in between that, you can call a special session. These are not scheduled on the calendar. They're announced by the House Speaker or the Senate President, or the governor can call them back to deal with issues specific to a special session. And since we're past that May 30th deadline, you have to have super majorities to pass things to be effective immediately. So Governor J.B. Pritzker, he was out with Planned Parenthood yesterday, and Planned Parenthood officials, they essentially endorsed the governor, saying that he needs to be reelected in order to keep abortion access open in Illinois. And also they talked about how other states restricting the procedure to terminate a pregnancy is causing an uptick of out-of-state residents to come to Illinois to seek the procedure. So, the governor, of course, was asked in the Q&A about, well, what's going on with the special session? More than 2 months ago, you guys said you're going to have a special session to deal with abortion issues. What's the holdup? What's the delay? And you'll hear the governor's response. But, this was also a question 2 weeks ago at the Illinois State Fair. And then it was a question 2 weeks before that. It's been a question every other week or so. since Democrats announced they wanted a special session, but there's still no indication of when that's going to happen. So even at the state fair, I asked the Senate Minority Leader, Republican leader Dan McConkey, what his thoughts were on will there be a special session. And he provided some insight as to why he thinks there's a holdup of actually announcing a special session to deal with abortion. But first, let's hear what the governor had to say yesterday when asked about the progress that's being made. Are we going to see a special session, or what exactly is going to happen? Here's Governor J.B. Pritzker standing alongside Planned Parenthood yesterday in Chicago.
Oh, no, the legislators are hard at work now, I think you know, in working groups. In fact, working with Planned Parenthood and many other pro-choice organizations to make sure that they can craft the legislation that we need. You heard about the need to protect from legal liability, criminal and civil liability that other states want to bring against people in Illinois, against their own people who come to Illinois. Those are parts of what need to be addressed by the legislature. Then there's the expansion of capacity, allowing nurse practitioners to perform procedures to make sure that we're protecting and growing the existing capacity of the clinics that are here, and then attracting other clinics to come to Illinois. Those are all things that are being considered by the working groups in the legislature. There are things that you can't do as an executive order. There are things that the legislature really does need to do. We need it enshrined into law. And so, again, those things are all being worked out. We're talking to the legislature, working with the Attorney General's office, but making sure that we're making progress. And once again, the increase in the reimbursement rates is real progress.
We're not hearing anything new in regards to special session. I think it's because the Democrats understand that what they want to do is go even farther on abortion, even more extreme than like any other state in the country. And I think they recognize we already have some of the most extreme abortion laws in the country. Going further might actually alienate voters this fall.
So I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think's behind special session not coming together. Is it because they don't have those votes to get up on the big board with supermajorities to make something immediate? And if they can't make something immediate, does it look like they're not trying hard enough to those who want more laws concerning access to abortion? Or is it too much of a political sticky issue heading into November? And you've got questions about who's going to ultimately control the Illinois State House and the Illinois Senate, and so on. So the political considerations here are interesting to kind of sit back as somewhat of a neutral observer and watch the political discussions back and forth. But there's obviously a lot of issues, and the governor addressed those kind of up front, saying it's a lot to tackle, including some of the questions about civil and criminal liability that other states might try to go after providers in the state of Illinois if they perform an abortion on somebody who's from out of state. So I mean, those are interesting legal questions that are being discussed. But here we are, rapidly approaching the November election. Are we going to have those working groups at the Illinois House at least produce something that they can come back before the election and get their votes on? Or is this something that's really going to have to wait until after the November election? We shall see. We'll bring you the latest here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. You can always call in live and local at 217-629-7970, or you can message me via Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. Just search out Bishop on Air and we can connect that way, or you can email bishoponair@gmail.com.